Hey, sequel addicts. James Curtis, aka the Porkchop Express, here for Iheartsequels blogspot.com. Just kind of wanted to give you a final wrap up, my thoughts on The Dark Knight Rises, sort of a encapsulated review, and also give you my final thoughts on the Batman on the Big Screen roundtable, which unfortunately cut off. You guys lost about probably a good 7 or 8 more minutes, although I felt like the conversation definitely could have gone on longer. First things first, Dark Knight Rises. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie. I think the more people are going to look at it, the more they're going to realize this is basically the Jedi of the series. It's definitely the lightest of the three. The trilogy follows a very similar pattern to Lucas's classic trilogy. Batman Begins is basically Star Wars. We don't call that shit Episode 4 around here. We call it Star Wars. But Batman Begins introduces you to the characters, gets you really immersed in their world, the atmosphere of the universe, and so on and so forth. Second one is definitely Empire Strikes Back. It's the darkest of the films. It's got the most character stuff with regards to changes, the world being sort of turned upside down. We're left with a very sort of open-ended, very dark ending, leading us into the final act, the big end of the trilogy. And then Dark Knight Rises is basically Jedi. It doesn't have Ewoks, but it is a fairly light film. It has Nolan having the most fun he's had in any of the 3 films, which at times can feel a little strange considering how flat everything feels. And this is where I'm going to be treading into critical territory and stuff that might get me kind of lambasted, but it kind of got talked about a little bit in the roundtable. I honestly don't feel like anybody involved was particularly interested in making this movie. I feel like that's reflected in most of the performances. The only performances that I really enjoyed were from the newcomers, mainly Joey Gordon-Levitt and Anne Hathaway. Everybody else was pretty much going through the motions as far as I was concerned. I thought the opening, the James Bond stuff, you could tell Nolan was having fun, but his sense of action directing is getting much more boring. I can't think of a better way to say it. It's getting a lot more boring for me. I think maybe he's responded to a lot of the criticisms that have been leveled at his work, particularly the fast cam and the quick cut stuff that was going on in the first film, and has made a very flat, very dry action film. It doesn't have a lot of style. The whole film doesn't have a lot of style. I think for my money, Batman Begins is the one that I'm most happy to look at, to just watch visually. Even with all the crazy shit that's going on, it felt like Nolan actually had a real grasp on the look and the feel of Gotham in that film, and the way Batman fights and the way people fight with Batman. And I know a lot of people don't like it, but I understood what he was going for. Now, there's so many scenes in this film that have very little visceral or impact. But anyway, so that's one thing. It's really hard to elaborate on everything, but I felt like a lot of the action was flat, a lot of the performances were flat. I felt like a lot of the stuff was wound up being fairly like they didn't know what to do with the story after the second one. For me, the second one should have ended with Batman going underground, but still being Batman. I still have a problem with this 8-year gap between the end of The Dark Knight and the beginning of Dark Knight Rises. I think there's something really wrong with making that decision. It's something I talked about in the roundtable, but it's something I really want to drive home. The other thing, too, is that the Dent Act feels flimsy. It feels completely innocuous. As a piece of legislation, it's obviously film puffery, but it really doesn't make a lot of sense. I have a hard time believing that this one piece of legislation was strong enough that crime went down so dramatically that the cops basically look at this as peacetime, and that Batman doesn't do anything. I understand why he's not doing anything in the superficial sense. He's been wounded emotionally and physically. He's obviously hiding out, but the Batman, to me, isn't the kind of guy who hides out. He's supposed to be driven by a greater purpose. This does tie into the way Nolan wants to make this movie, though. He wanted to make a one-shot Batman trilogy. For him, there was a beginning, a middle, and an end. It wasn't something that was going to go on for years and years and years. You're not going to see Batman from The Dark Knight Returns. You're not going to see a guy who fights as Batman until he's in his mid to late 40s and then disappears and then comes back. That's not the way it's going. Batman in this film goes out as a very young man and goes out with some prospects. I will again say that I did like the happy ending. It felt in keeping with Batman, for my money. I mean, it's a guy who always has a plan. A happy ending in the sense that he may still be Batman. I think that there's a lot of this argument that the Batman as we know it is completely done, and it clearly is in Nolan's story arc, but there's room for change. There's room for him to join up with Robin, whatever. But what I meant by the happy ending is Batman doesn't die. I have a hard time with Batman dying. He's a man with a plan. He's a man who's so smart, as crazed as he is. He's always got a way out. And I was happy that he wasn't dead at the end of the film. His way out might seem a little goofy and does come across as fairly cheesy. There's, Nolan's not very good with levity. Or sincerity in these films, I feel like. He's created a world where everything is so real and so heavy-handed with these last two films that anytime you have a moment of levity or sincerity, you kind of wind up laughing at it, but not the way you're supposed to be laughing at it, or the way you're supposed to be warming up to it. Again, that ending with Robin, like we discussed in the roundtable, comes across as kind of hokey. Sexual politics, gender politics in this film really goes back again to some problems I have with Nolan and the way female characters in his films are written. They're very perfunctory. But this one kind of upset me in a big way. Here's a movie where the main character pretty much loses the last family member he has because of this relationship, this cross that he's had to bear with the death of the woman that he loved, whom he thought loved him. And he loses the relationship with Alfred over that, seemingly. I'm still confused by the way Nolan sets his plots up and his characters. There's almost a part of me that makes me wonder the way it's all unravels, how into this plot is Alfred. Anyway, but that's besides the point. So you have a guy who loses a family member because of this cross he had to bear, this relationship that has had such a profound effect on him. But then almost immediately, for the first time ever in these movies, you clearly see Bruce Wayne have sex with another woman who he might have had some history with within the context of the story, but we never see anything about that history. Honestly, it seems fairly superficial that Bruce Wayne is willing to hook up with Miranda Tate. At the same time, here's a woman who, with Selina Kyle and Catwoman, here's a woman that Bruce Wayne has a much more complex relationship with that we see. We can see why he might be attracted to her. Obviously, things aren't going to go the way he wants them to go because she fucks him over. But their relationship feels more genuine, feels more earned. It doesn't feel that way with Miranda Tate because everything is so obligatory, so perfunctory, that you're surprised that he winds up having sex with Miranda Tate, but he has this very chaste relationship with Catwoman, which I'm not saying I want to see him have sex with Catwoman. My problem is he winds up with Selina Kyle at the end of the film. That seems very strange to me. But he winds up with a woman who has essentially fucked him over, misled him, treated him kind of like dirt. Maybe Bruce Wayne is a doormat, but he does wind up with someone who he has a much more complex and interesting relationship with, but one that feels very chaste, very old-fashioned, especially by the time you get to the end of the movie. But on the flip side of that, you have the woman who he does have sex with, who you don't really understand why he's had sex with her, because within the context of the film, we don't see a relationship. I don't feel like there's a core there. It's talked about, but it's never shown. But he winds up having sex with this woman seemingly out of nowhere after everything that he's gone through with the loss of Rachel. And then the woman that he trusts himself with, the woman that he gives himself over to physically, turns out to be the one who fucks him over in the biggest fucking way, and turns out to be a crazy bitch. And there's no two ways around it. That's the way that Nolan paints that picture. And that's kind of fucked up. It really does speak to a lot of the problems I have with just sexual politics, gender politics in these films. It's very old-fashioned. It's very hyper-masculine. But whatever. God, so many things. The thing is with all the stuff that I'm criticizing, I still enjoyed Dark Knight Rises. I want to go back and watch it one more time. I've only seen it once. I also didn't read any reviews or watch any reviews. I got to give a shout out to the people whose reviews I will be reading once I'm done with this. I will be, reading Devin Faraci and Drew McWeeny and Film Critic Hulk, and I will definitely be watching the Half in the Bag review. I'm sure these people have a lot more to say about it than I do, and I'm trying to keep this very concise. I did enjoy the film, but it's truly kind of a flawed film. And a lot of it's flawed in very superficial ways and very political ways and very emotional ways, but in general, I think one of the things that still makes it enjoyable is Nolan's approach to all of these films is one of propulsion, one of energy. He doesn't slow down necessarily. You don't feel the weight of those 3 hours the way you do in a lot of other big blockbusters are that long. I mean, Jeremy and Kyle and I both said yesterday, you want to see more of Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, not knowing that those almost 3 hours kind of just fly by. You want to see even more of these films. My ranking for these films is almost fucking completely consistent with my rankings for the Star Wars films. The second one is my favorite. It's not perfect. The first one is an incredibly enjoyable watch, with a really kind of goofy but perfunctory third act, the kind of third act that has to happen. Think about the first Star Wars film, too. The most enjoyable parts of that film, for me, are the earlier parts of the film. By the time you get to the end of the Death Star stuff, it's great. It helps establish what's going to continue on with these later films, but it just, that action scene has to happen, just like the action scene at the end of Batman Begins has to happen, or the action set pieces. And then Dark Knight Rises, I mean, I'll go back and watch it again, but I did like it. I didn't hate it. I'm not profoundly disappointed. I got to read that review, too. Apparently Harry Knowles was profoundly disappointed by it. But like all the films in this series, it's not perfect. There's definitely things I'd love to thrash about it. My biggest complaint about it is that Nolan's sense of style is just completely disappearing in these films. And it's hard for me to believe in the more fantastical elements of the Batman universe with the way that Nolan has decided to make this third film in particular. Other superficial things, I hate Bane's voice. Bane isn't even as frightening of a character as you would like, but Bane's voice does bug me. And it's not just because you can't understand him. It sounds like he's standing off camera. It just sounds like he's in another fucking room. Maybe it was the sound mix, something. He also sounds like Patrick Stewart talking through shit. The Batwing is awful. There's some other things that are just ridiculous. And of course there's all those really stupid plot things too, like how the hell does Bruce Wayne get back to Gotham after he gets out of the pit? How did he learn to fly the damn bat? All that stuff. I mean, there's quite a bit. So, but in general, I liked the movie. It's my least favorite of the three, but it's not a total failure. Now, within the context of the entire Batman universe, my opinion obviously hasn't changed. My favorite film that was released theatrically is Batman Mask of the Phantasm. It's just the perfect balance of the dark, serious, emotional side of Batman, but it also contains the right balance of that with the fantastical, with the levity of those characters. It's like perfect. That being said, it is animated, and some people would say it's a cheat. It's also a spin-off from the TV show. Some people would say it was cheat. I count it because I saw it in the movie theaters, motherfucker. I saw all of these movies except for the Adam West one in the theaters. I'm not that old, so I didn't see Adam West, the Adam West version in the theater. My second favorite is still Batman Returns. I love what Burton did with the universe. Again, that combination of the crazy and the kooky and the emotional stuff, and there's a real perverse heart at the center of Batman Returns. But it's a heart nonetheless, like so many directors like Joe Dante and Guillermo del Toro. Burton definitely identifies with the monsters. So there is a lot of focus on the bad guys in these movies, or in that movie. But I really enjoy that focus. After that, I'd probably say, in order, I'd go, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Batman Returns, Dark Knight, Batman Begins, Dark Knight Rises, Batman the Adam West film. Actually, I'd probably put Batman the Adam West film above Dark Knight Rises for now. So then Dark Knight Rises, then Batman and Robin, and then Batman Forever. And I will qualify that for people. I went in with no expectations to Batman and Robin. It's not a great movie. It's got a lot of problems, but I kind of find it to be sort of a laugh riot, and I get what Joel Schumacher was trying to do. But you can also tell that he's kind of been stifled. He wants to do something even more outlandish, and he can't. But I feel like as far as Schumacher films goes, I can stomach Batman and Robin, with the exception of a couple things. I have a harder time with Batman Forever. A lot of that is I hate Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne and as Batman. I can't stand him. But there's both of those films are pretty crap. But I'll take Batman and Robin over Batman Forever. Still, my main problem with both of those films is the fanboys. And a lot of that just comes back to homophobia. I'm sick of the goddamn homophobia in the fucking scene, in the comic book world, the fanboys. I mean, there's obviously gay comic book readers, gay and lesbian, LGBT comic book readers who might have the same complaints that some of these other guys do, but honestly, the shit that gets leveled against the Schumacher films reeks to me more of homophobia than serious criticism. There's not a lot of thought put into the way people analyze those films, except superficially. And I don't know why that is still the fucking norm, but it is. I'm not in defense of all the Schumacher work, but he is a better director than most people give him credit for. He's done some really good films. I kind of want to kick the crap out of the homophobia in the scene, and the way people use that as a way of analyzing those two movies. So yeah, that's pretty much my rundown. If you wanted to know about the Batman universe, I will be doing some more stuff. Obviously, I'm still trying to get some friends in here to talk about all the Spider-Man films, the Sam Raimi ones, and there will be more to come for sure. I do want to take this time to make a couple of left of center recommendations for people. Out in the theaters right now, there's a movie called Beasts of the Southern Wild. It's a really good film. I don't know if it's a great film, but it's something really different. I really enjoyed it. I think a lot of people are having a hard time selling this movie. And the way I'm pegging this for people is it's an interesting mix of magical realism, the kind of stuff you see coming out of Studio Ghibli, and the work of Werner Herzog. A lot of people that I've read writing up the film talk about Terrence Malick, but I don't feel that. I feel a lot more the work of Werner Herzog informing it. And then on the other side of that, there's the combination of the magical realism stuff, something that you'd find more in the works of, say, like a Toni Morrison, or even the book Swamplandia from last year, where they're blending these elements of very real settings and very fantastical elements, and they're not explaining why they're it's a lot of it's allegory, but there's no explanaation for the fantastical elements, and I love the way they fused that. It also reminds me of the work of Studio Ghibli, with regards to stuff like My Neighbor Totoro and Only Yesterday and Grave of the Fireflies, where you've got these fairly young protagonists set against some incredible strife, and again, the fantastic elements in that. There's a lot of stuff in Miyazaki's films that reeks of magical realism, of course, like My Neighbor Totoro. But so that's Beasts of the Southern Wild. It's a hell of a movie. Read up on it, because I'm not going to get into the plot stuff, but that's the way I would try and engage you into watching this film, is think magical realism, think Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli in general, and think Werner Herzog. That would be the best way I would talk about it. The other thing I would talk about is one of my favorite movies of this year, which has just come out on DVD. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray yet, but it is on DVD, and it's available to stream, and it's a documentary called Jiro Dreams of Sushi. It's a documentary about the best sushi chef in the world. It's a gorgeous film, really sweet, very meditative, not the most fast-paced thing, but truly engaging, especially for anybody who really wants to talk about the process, and not just the way things work, but the obsessions that come along with wanting to do something really great. This is a film that talks about art and obsession and craft and dedication in a way that few films do when they're talking about something like food. You could see why the filmmakers wanted to tell this story, to talk about this guy. He approaches sushi the way a lot of people approach their art, and he's not the only one. There's a lot of peripheral characters. Obviously, this is not a narrative feature. This is nonfiction, documentary. But there's a lot of people in his life that really exude that same dedication. Just watching the way the people talk about the produce and the fish and everything just is really fantastic, and it's really a sweet film, and it's a great way to spend. It's just a little over 90 minutes, basically. I saw it in the theater back in spring. It's now out on DVD. You can Netflix it. You can, VOD and all that good stuff. So anyway, I will be back. These are my, not the end of my thoughts on Batman, but this is my wrap-up for the world of Batman on the big screen for now. We'll see what happens when they reboot Batman. I don't know what I want to see out of a rebooted Batman. But I don't want to see another Nolan movie. It's nothing against Christopher Nolan. I'm glad he did what he did, but I want to see something different. Just like I really want to see what Zack Snyder does with Superman, and I hope to God it's as much Zack Snyder's film as it is Christopher Nolan's, and maybe more Zack Snyder's. I can see Zack Snyder really going whole hog with Superman. I have a hard time believing Christopher Nolan can handle the more fantastical and sentimental elements of Superman. But anyway, that's enough from me. Enjoy life, man. Go to the movie theaters. After everything that we've been through recently with what happened in Colorado and just life in general, and if you love movies, go to the theater. Go to the theater as much as you can. I wish I could go to the movies as much as I used to. I used to go to the movie theaters every day. I'm not kidding. Life has changed. I'm in my early 30s now, and I can't do that as much as I want to. But I used to go to the movie theaters, no kidding, every day, sometimes twice a day, especially if you count double features and things of that sort. But take the time. Enjoy life. If you're a movie geek, tell people to go to the movies. Profess your love for the movie theaters. Don't, just dissuade them from avoiding the movie theaters because of some fucking dipshit and the things that he's got up to. I mean, I hate to be reductionist, but fuck that guy. I'm not going to let him fucking stop my life. I'm so fucking heartbroken for the loss of all those people, and I'm even more heartbroken for the people who are left behind, the people who are physically and emotionally scarred. It's going to be a rough thing for many people to get over, and I hope with everything that goes on, the reverberations don't last. But he fucking hurt a lot of people, and but at the same time, you got to keep living, no matter what somebody did. Anyway, I try not to get into this, but the main thing is profess your love. If you're a movie geek, profess your love for the theater, man. I mean, it's already hard enough to get people to go to the movie theater as it is without what this asshole did. So, that being said, I'm going to catch something this weekend, maybe one or two things. Enjoy life, enjoy movies, enjoy sequels. This is, again, James Curtis, the Pork Chop Express, signing off. Until next time.